He had the world at his feet, but his soul was starving. She had nothing but a uniform, yet her heart was a kingdom. What happens when a billionaire heir realizes that the woman he's about to marry is a monster, and the true love of his life is the invisible woman scrubbing his floors? We live in a world that judges you by your wallet, not your character. It's painful, isn't it? To feel unseen, undervalued. But today, we're shattering that illusion. Meet Jacob Brady, a man blinded by wealth, and Zoey Rodriguez, the maid who cleans his mess. This isn't just a love story, it's a war between a cruel social class gap and the undeniable power of kindness. We're talking about a rejected fiancé, a stolen ring, a shocking betrayal, and a redemption arc so powerful it will leave you breathless. Get ready for an emotional roller coaster that plunges from the marble halls of a mansion to the gritty reality of a fish market. You will cry, you will rage, and you will cheer. So, are you ready to witness justice served? If you believe that true worth comes from within, smash that like button, subscribe to join our family of dreamers, and let's dive into the story of how a maid captivated an heir. The grand ballroom looked like a hurricane of expensive champagne, and confetti had just swept through it, leaving a sticky, glittering disaster in its wake. Amidst the chaos of this billionaire lifestyle, Zoey Rodriguez, a humble maid with eyes full of quiet resilience, moved silently across the marble floor. She was meticulously picking up crystal flutes that cost more than her entire wardrobe, feeling the heavy, suffocating weight of the social class gap pressing down on her tired shoulders. To the wealthy guests who had just left, laughing and stumbling into their limousines, she was nobody, just part of the machinery that kept their world turning. But to us, she's the beating heart of this love story waiting to unfold. It's funny how people can look right through you, isn't it? Like you're made of glass, not flesh and blood. Jacob Brady, the handsome but distant heir to the Brady empire, stood by the balcony doors, nursing a scotch and looking utterly bored with his own existence. He didn't even glance at the housekeeper scrubbing a stubborn wine stain near his polished Italian shoes, treating her presence as a natural inconvenience. To him, she was just background noise, a ghost in a uniform that he didn't need to acknowledge. It wasn't that he was evil, per se, he was just conditioned by his upbringing to be completely blind to the little people serving him. It's a classic rich man poor woman setup, right? But hold your horses, because Jacob's cold indifference is about to meet its match. He sighed, checking his phone, completely unaware that destiny was scrubbing the floor 3 feet away. Zoey didn't mind the hard work, honest labor never scared her, and she took pride in a job well done despite the ache in her back. But the way Jacob walked past her, almost stepping on her hand without a simple sorry or excuse me, stung a bit more than usual tonight. She wasn't seeking attention or praise, just basic human decency that seemed to be in short supply in this mansion. She remembered how her mother used to say, "Zoey, pride isn't about money, it's about how you carry yourself when you're humiliated." So, she kept her head down, collecting the discarded velvet masks of the elite. She was writing her own emotional script tonight, one where dignity matters more than diamonds. Honestly, have you ever felt invisible like that? It's a gut punch that leaves a bruise on your soul. The massive banner above the stage read Jacob Vanessa, celebrating a union that felt more like a corporate merger than a romance drama. While Jacob Brady brooded over his future, Zoey Rodriguez cleared the broken remnants of his present, sweeping away the debris of a party she wasn't invited to. It's ironic, really. The man has everything: money, power, a fiancée, yet he looks emptier than the champagne bottles Zoey is tossing in the recycling bin. She paused for a second to wipe her brow, catching a glimpse of him staring into the night. He looked trapped. Strange, huh? The billionaire in a golden cage and the maid with the key to freedom he hasn't found yet. Suddenly, Jacob turned sharply, his coat tail knocking a heavy vase off a pedestal near the entrance in a moment of carelessness. Zoey dove, catching it inches from the floor with reflexes that would put a professional athlete to shame, saving the antique from shattering. "Careful," she whispered, breathless, clutching the porcelain tight against her chest as if it were a child. Jacob blinked, looking at the vase, then at her, as if noticing a lamp had suddenly started talking to him. For a split second, the heir actually saw the housekeeper, their eyes locking in a fleeting moment of confusion. "Oh. Thanks," he muttered, quickly averting his gaze as if acknowledging her existence broke some unwritten rule of his class. He walked away without another word, leaving Zoe holding the vase like a holy relic in the center of the room. She placed it back, shaking her head with a wry smile, brushing a stray lock of hair from her face. She was used to being treated like furniture, but even furniture gets dusted occasionally, unlike her heart. Jacob Brady might be the king of the castle, but tonight, Zoe was the uncelebrated queen of the cleanup. Little did he know, this invisible woman was about to become the only thing he could see. As the lights dimmed, leaving Zoe alone in the vast hall, the silence screamed that a life-changing storm was brewing just over the horizon. Zoe finally finished her shift, her hands raw from the cleaning chemicals, her spirit tired but unbroken by the night's indifference. She grabbed her coat, casting one last look at the portrait of Jacob that hung in the hallway, his painted eyes looking as cold as the real ones. She didn't know it yet, but that coldness was a defense mechanism, a wall built to hide a lonely heart. This Cinderella story wasn't going to start with a magic pumpkin, but with the grit of reality. As she walked out into the cool night air, she took a deep breath. The rejection hadn't even officially happened yet, but the emotional journey had already begun. The following week, the mansion was buzzing with wedding planners, florists, and the high-pitched demands of the bride Tobe. Jacob sat at the mahogany dining table, surrounded by fabric swatches he couldn't care less about. Zoey Rodriguez was there too, polishing the silverware right next to them, practically vibrating with invisibility. Jacob would gesture vaguely in her direction, saying things like, "Move that," without ever making eye contact. It was as if she were a robot programmed solely for his convenience, a prop in his life rather than a person. This is the harsh reality of the social class gap. Some people are the players, and others are just the board. Vanessa, the fiancée, was a vision of expensive taste and sharp edges, discussing the guest list with a ruthless efficiency. "We simply cannot invite the Jenkins, Jacob, they are new money," she sneered, sipping her latte. Jacob nodded absently, his mind clearly elsewhere, perhaps wishing he was anywhere but there. Meanwhile, Zoe silently refilled their water glasses, her presence so ignored that they discussed sensitive family secrets right in front of her. It's fascinating and terrifying what people will say when they think the help doesn't have ears. Being a maid in this house meant being a vault of secrets, holding the weight of their truths while they couldn't even remember your name. At one point, Jacob needed to demonstrate the aisle width and literally physically moved Zoe aside by her shoulders as if she were a coat rack. He didn't shove her, but the casual nature of the contact devoid of any human recognition was chilling. Zoe stiffened but didn't say a word, her face a mask of professional calm, though inside, a fire was kindling. This wasn't just about being a housekeeper, it was about being erased. It begs the question, how much longer can someone be treated like a ghost before they decide to haunt you? The rich man poor woman dynamic was in full swing, but the balance was painfully off. "I want lilies," Vanessa declared, "thousands of them. I don't care about the cost." Jacob rubbed his temples, a headache clearly forming behind his eyes. "Whatever you want, Vanessa," he replied, his voice devoid of any passion or excitement for his own wedding. Zoe looked up briefly, catching the deadness in his tone, and felt a pang of unexpected pity for the billionaire. He was buying a future he clearly didn't want, paying for it with his soul. It was a tragedy hiding in plain sight, wrapped in silk and expensive flowers. Even the maid could see what the heir refused to admit: this wasn't a love story, it was a business transaction. As the meeting dragged on, Zoe continued her work, her movements rhythmic and soothing against the chaotic energy of the couple. She was the only grounding force in the room, the only element of reality in their artificial bubble. Jacob dropped his pen, and before he could even reach for it, Zoe had retrieved it and placed it softly on the table. He paused, his hand hovering over the pen, a flicker of awareness crossing his face. For a second, he realized how many times she had done this, smoothed the edges of his life without credit. But the moment passed as quickly as it came, buried under Vanessa's next demand. The planners finally left, leaving a trail of brochures and anxiety in their wake. Jacob remained at the table, head in hands, while Zoey quietly began to clear the mess. "Rough day?" she asked softly, the words slipping out before she could stop them. Jacob looked up, genuinely startled that the furniture had spoken. He looked at her, really looked at her, for a brief, uncomfortable second. "You have no idea," he muttered, surprising himself by answering. It wasn't a conversation, not yet, but it was a crack in the wall. A tiny fissure where the destiny of two very different people might eventually collide. Zoey walked away with the tray of dirty cups, her heart beating a little faster. She knew her place, but she also knew that pain looks the same in everyone's eyes, regardless of their bank account. Jacob Brady was the envy of the city, but Zoey Rodriguez was the only one who saw his cage. As she washed the cups in the kitchen, she wondered if he would ever break free. The humiliated silence she usually endured had been broken, if only for a second. And sometimes, a second is all it takes to start a revolution in the heart. If Jacob was indifferent, Vanessa was actively malicious, treating the staff like her personal punching bags. She seemed to sense Zoey's quiet grace and took it as a personal challenge to break her spirit. "This coffee is lukewarm," Vanessa snapped the next morning, pouring the liquid into a potted plant while maintaining eye contact with Zoey. "Make it again. And get it right this time." Zoey didn't flinch, didn't argue. She simply nodded, "Yes, ma'am," and turned to brew a fresh pot. It takes a special kind of strength to remain soft when the world tries to harden you. This was the burden of the housekeeper, absorbing the toxicity of the elite without letting it poison her own soul. Vanessa's demands grew increasingly absurd as the wedding date approached, testing the limits of human patience. She asked Zoey to iron her shoelaces, to hand-wash imported silk napkins at 3 a.m., and to scrub the patio with a toothbrush. Through it all, Zoey Rodriguez performed every task with a dignity that was almost regal. She knew who she was, and no amount of bullying from a wealthy socialite could strip her of her value. But let's do a quick check-in here. If you were in Zoey's shoes, facing that kind of daily humiliation, would you have walked out? Or would you stay, driven by necessity and an inner strength that refuses to crumble? The cruelty peaked when Vanessa accidentally knocked over a bucket of dirty water Zoey was using, flooding the hallway. "Look what you've done. You're so clumsy," Vanessa shrieked, playing the victim as Jacob walked in. Jacob looked at the mess, then at Zoey, who was already on her knees soaking up the water. He didn't defend her, but he didn't scold her either. He just stepped over the puddle, sighing. That silence was a knife. To be judged for a mess you didn't make is one thing, but to see the person who could stop it just walk away. That's the real heartbreak of this rejected fiancé preamble. Zoey continued to wipe the floor, her hands trembling slightly, not from fear, but from the effort of holding back tears. She wasn't crying for herself, she was crying for the lack of kindness in this house. It was a cold, sterile palace where money replaced manners. Yet, amidst this storm, Zoey remained the calm center. She didn't retaliate with words. Her revenge was her unconditional love for her own principles. She refused to lower herself to Vanessa's level. This is the hallmark of a true Cinderella story, not the dress or the prince, but the unwavering character in the face of cruelty. One afternoon, Vanessa demanded Zoey stand in the sun holding an umbrella over her while she lunched on the terrace, simply because the umbrella stand looked tacky. For an hour, Zoey stood like a statue, sweat trickling down her back, shielding the woman who tormented her. Jacob watched from his office window, a strange feeling gnawing at his gut. He saw Zoey's unwavering posture, her patience, and contrasted it with Vanessa's petty tyranny. It was a visual representation of the shocking twist happening in his subconscious. The maid was acting like a queen, and his fiancé was acting like a tyrant. When Vanessa finally dismissed her with a dismissive wave, Zoey's legs nearly gave out, but she walked away with her head high. She went to the kitchen, drank a glass of water, and took a deep breath. She wasn't doing this for Jacob, and certainly not for Vanessa. She was doing it because she had bills to pay and a sick grandmother to support. Her redemption wasn't about pleasing them, it was about surviving them. But survival has a way of turning into triumph when you least expect it. The seeds of change were being watered by her sweat and hidden tears. That evening, as Zoey left the mansion, she looked back at the lit windows. She felt a strange sense of pity for Jacob again. He was marrying a monster, and he was too blind to see it. Or maybe he was just too afraid to look. Either way, Zoey knew that a storm was coming. You can't build a marriage on a foundation of cruelty and expect it to stand. The rich man-poor woman divide was huge, but the divide in human decency was even wider. And Zoey was on the right side of that chasm, waiting for the bridge to collapse. The flu hit Jacob Brady like a freight train, stripping the billionaire of his composure and leaving him shivering in his massive bed. His face was pale, sweat beading on his forehead as he groaned in pain, the silence of the room amplifying his misery. Vanessa stood at the doorway, dressed in a stunning evening gown, checking her reflection in the mirror. "Jacob, darling, I simply can't stay," she said, adjusting her diamond earrings. "It's the charity gala. People expect me there. Besides, I can't risk getting sick before the wedding." Her voice was devoid of empathy, concerned only with appearances. This was the moment the mask slipped, revealing the cold reality of their relationship. Jacob reached out a weak hand. "Vanessa, please. I feel terrible." But she recoiled, taking a step back as if he were radioactive. "Don't be dramatic. The staff will check on you. I'll see you tomorrow," she said, blowing a kiss from a safe distance before turning on her heel. The sound of her heels clicking down the hallway was the final insult. He was the heir to a fortune, yet in his moment of vulnerability, he was completely alone. It's a harsh lesson: money can buy the best doctors, but it can't buy someone who actually gives a damn about holding your hand when you're burning up. Enter Zoey Rodriguez. She had finished her shift but heard the commotion and saw Vanessa leave. Sensing something was wrong, she went upstairs, defying the unspoken rule that the help stays invisible. She found Jacob tangled in his sheets, delirious and parched. Without a second thought, she dropped her bag and went to work. This wasn't in her job description, this was pure heart-touching humanity. She wasn't the housekeeper now, she was a caregiver. She fetched cool water, fresh towels, and medicine, moving with a gentle efficiency that Jacob had never experienced from anyone in his circle. "Vanessa?" Jacob mumbled, his eyes unfocused. "No, sir." "It's Zoey," she whispered soothingly, placing a cool cloth on his burning forehead. He flinched at the touch, then relaxed, leaning into the comfort. For hours, she sat by his bedside, changing the compresses, making sure he stayed hydrated, and whispering reassuring words when the fever spiked. She missed her bus, she missed her dinner, but she didn't leave him. This is the definition of unconditional love in its purest, platonic form: caring for another soul simply because they are suffering. The contrast was blinding. The woman who claimed to love him was sipping champagne at a gala, while the woman he ignored was saving him from his own feverish nightmare. Zoey looked at his sleeping face, stripped of his arrogance and power, and saw just a man. A lonely, sick man. She wondered if anyone had ever just taken care of him without an agenda. It seemed unlikely. In this rich man poor woman narrative, the wealth was actually a barrier to genuine connection, and illness was the battering ram breaking it down. As the night deepened, Jacob's breathing steadied. Zoey sat in the armchair in the corner, keeping a vigilant watch. She was exhausted, but she couldn't bring herself to leave him alone in this mausoleum of a house. She was the guardian he didn't know he needed. This act of kindness was the turning point, the life-changing event that would rewrite the code of their relationship. She wasn't doing it for a reward, she was doing it because it was the right thing to do. Be honest, in a world that tells you to look out for number one, isn't that kind of selflessness the most shocking thing of all? By dawn, the fever had broken. Zoey quietly gathered her things, intending to slip away before he woke up fully. She didn't want him to feel embarrassed or indebted. She was just the maid, after all. But as she closed the door softly behind her, she left behind more than just a recovered patient. She left a lingering trace of warmth in a cold life. Jacob Brady had been abandoned by his future wife but saved by the woman who cleaned his floors. The seeds of true love are often sown in the darkest, quietest moments. The fevered dreams had been chaotic, a swirling mix of anxiety and heat, but through the haze, one image remained crystal clear: Zoey. Jacob woke up with a heavy head but a clearer mind, the morning light filtering through the curtains. He remembered the cool hands, the soft voice, the presence that anchored him when he felt like he was drifting away. He looked around the room, expecting to see a nurse or just maybe Vanessa. But the room was empty. Yet, on the nightstand, there was a fresh pitcher of water and a small note in neat handwriting: "Drink this. Hope you feel better. Zoey." He picked up the note, staring at it as if it were an alien artifact. A simple piece of paper from the housekeeper carried more warmth than his entire 3-year relationship with Vanessa. He sat up, the realization hitting him like a physical blow. The woman he was about to marry had left him to rot, while the woman he treated like furniture had stayed. It forced him to confront a terrifying question: was his entire life a lie? The destiny he had mapped out, the power couple marriage, the empire, suddenly felt hollow. This is the emotional journey of a man waking up from more than just a flu. Jacob got out of bed, his legs shaky, and walked to the window. He saw Zoey down in the garden, pruning the roses. He watched her for a long time, really observing her. She wasn't just a uniform anymore. He saw the way she paused to smell a flower, the way she carefully moved a beetle off a leaf instead of squashing it. Her kindness wasn't an act, it was her nature. He compared that to Vanessa, who would have crushed the beetle and complained about the flower's scent. The contrast was agonizing. He was the heir to a kingdom of ice, and he had just felt the sun for the first time. Later that day, when Zoey entered the library to dust, the atmosphere was different. Jacob was there, pretending to read, but his eyes followed her. "Zoey," he said, his voice raspy. She froze, expecting a reprimand. "Yes, Mr. Brady." He hesitated, struggling with the words. "Thank you. For last night." The words felt foreign in his mouth, but they hung in the air, heavy with meaning. Zoey turned, a genuine smile lighting up her face, a smile he had never earned. "You're welcome, sir. I'm glad you're feeling better." That smile. It was dangerous. It was the kind of smile that could topple empires. He found himself wanting to keep her in the room. "How long have you worked here?" he asked, a question he should have known the answer to years ago. 3 years, sir," she replied politely. 3 years. He had walked past this woman for over 1,000 days and never known her. He felt a wave of shame, a deep, burning humiliation for his own ignorance. The rich man poor woman trope usually relies on the man saving the woman, but here, she had saved him. She had saved him from the delusion that he was alone. This interaction planted a seed of doubt about his upcoming nuptials. Every time he looked at Vanessa now, he saw her walking away from his sickbed. And every time he looked at Zoey, he saw her staying. It was a shocking twist in his own internal narrative. He began to question everything: his friends, his lifestyle, his values. Was he just a wallet to these people? If he lost everything tomorrow, who would stay? He knew the answer, and it terrified him. The maid had more integrity in her pinky finger than his entire social circle combined. As Zoey left the library, Jacob didn't go back to his book. He sat there, staring at the empty doorway, feeling the tectonic plates of his life shifting. He was beginning to understand that value isn't determined by net worth, but by the worth of one's heart. He was on a path to redemption, but the road would be rocky. He was still engaged, still trapped, but his eyes were open. And once you see the truth, you can never really go back to sleep. A few days later, panic swept through the Brady mansion. Jacob's vintage Patek Philippe watch, a family heirloom worth more than the house itself, was missing. He tore through his room, overturning drawers, his temper flaring. "It has to be here," he shouted, accusing the heir. Vanessa, naturally, immediately pointed a manicured finger at the staff. It's obviously one of them, Jacob. You can't trust these people. They see what we have, and they take it. It's their nature. Her words were poison, designed to widen the social class gap and feed his paranoia. The staff was lined up in the hallway, eyes downcast, terrified. Vanessa demanded a search of their bags, their lockers, stripping them of their dignity. Zoey stood at the end of the line, her face pale but composure intact. She knew she hadn't taken it, but she also knew that in the eyes of the rich, the poor are always guilty until proven innocent. It was a scene of utter humiliation, a reminder that their employment hung by a thread of whim. Jacob watched, uncomfortable but silent, swayed by Vanessa's venom. He was about to authorize the search when Zoey stepped forward. "Mr. Brady," she said, her voice steady despite the tension. "Is this what you're looking for?" She pulled her hand from her apron pocket. In her palm lay the watch, gleaming under the hallway lights. Vanessa gasped, "I told you. She stole it and now she's trying to give it back to save her skin." Jacob looked at Zoey, searching for deceit in her eyes. But all he saw was absolute, transparent honesty. "Where did you find it?" he asked, ignoring Vanessa's screeching. "It had slipped behind the cushion of the armchair in the library, sir," Zoey explained calmly. "I found it while vacuuming just now. I was coming to bring it to you immediately." The room fell silent. If she had wanted to steal it, she could have easily kept it. She could have sold it on the black market and changed her life forever. But she didn't. She brought it back. This was the moral dilemma in action: do the right thing when no one is watching. Zoey passed the test with flying colors, shattering Vanessa's narrative of the greedy poor. Jacob took the watch, the cold metal heavy in his hand, but the weight of his guilt was heavier. He looked at Vanessa, who was fuming, disappointed that her witch hunt had failed. Then he looked at Zoey. "Thank you, Zoey," he said, his voice thick with emotion. I apologize for the accusation implied here." It was a rare moment of humility for the billionaire. He realized that Zoey possessed a treasure far more valuable than the watch integrity. In a world full of fakes, she was the real deal. This incident was a pivotal moment in their romance drama. It wasn't about romance, yet it was about respect. Jacob realized that Zoey was not only kind but morally superior to the people he associated with. It challenged his entire worldview. Why was he marrying a woman who jumped to destroy others, while ignoring the woman who protected his legacy? The rejected fiancé trope was looming closer, fueled by the stark contrast in character. Zoey returned to her work, head held high, having proven that honesty is a power that money cannot buy. As the staff dispersed, Jacob remained in the hallway, strapping the watch back on. It felt different now. It was a reminder not of his wealth, but of the woman who returned it. He was beginning to see Zoey not just as a maid, but as a moral compass in his chaotic life. The watch was ticking, counting down the time until he would have to make a choice between the life he was expected to lead and the life his heart was starting to crave. The atmosphere in the mansion had shifted. Jacob found himself seeking out reasons to be in the same room as Zoey, his curiosity piqued. He wasn't staring, he was observing. He noticed the books she read on her breaks: classics, philosophy, economics. He noticed the way she hummed complex melodies while dusting. She was a puzzle he was desperate to solve. One afternoon, Jacob was in a frantic state in his home office, his desk buried under mountains of paper. A critical merger document was missing, and the deadline was an hour away. He was shouting into his phone, on the verge of a breakdown. Zoey entered with a tray of coffee, sensing the tension. "Is everything all right, sir?" she asked tentatively. Jacob slammed the phone down. "No. I've lost the Henderson file. If I don't find it, the deal is dead. My father will kill me." He ran his hands through his hair, defeated. Zoey scanned the chaotic desk, her eyes narrowing slightly. She didn't panic. Instead, she processed the information with a calm, analytical mind. The Henderson file. Is that the one with the blue tagging you were reviewing Tuesday? She asked. Jacob looked at her, stunned. Yes. How did you know? Zoey moved to a side table where a stack of completed folders lay. You asked me to move the finished piles to the archive box on Tuesday evening. You placed it on the bottom of this stack because you said you wanted to double-check the annex. She pulled the bottom file. It was the Henderson file. Jacob stared at her as if she had just performed a magic trick. It wasn't magic, it was intelligence and attention to detail, traits he never ascribed to the help. I didn't realize you paid attention to my work, Jacob stammered, taking the file. Zoey smiled, a small, modest curve of her lips. I pay attention to everything in this house, sir. It's my job to keep order. But Jacob knew it was more than that. She had a sharp mind, capable of tracking complex details. He realized with a jolt that she was likely overqualified for her position. Did you go to college? He asked, the question slipping out. 2 years, she said softly, before my dad got sick and I had to work full-time. The revelation hit him hard. Here was a woman with potential, dreams, and intellect, forced by the social class gap to clean up after him. Yet, she didn't complain. She applied her intelligence to her current role with excellence. Jacob felt a surge of respect that went beyond gratitude. He began to see her as an intellectual equal, someone he could actually talk to. The barriers were crumbling. This wasn't just a maid, this was a partner in the making. The rich man-poor woman dynamic shifted from master-servant to a meeting of minds. He successfully sent the document, but his mind stayed on Zoey. He started asking her opinions on small things, color schemes, news headlines. Her answers were always insightful, grounded, and surprisingly witty. He found himself laughing, genuinely laughing, for the first time in months. Vanessa never made him laugh, she only made him anxious. Zoey made him feel human. He was falling for her mind before he even admitted he was falling for her heart. This growing connection was dangerous. It was a life-changing realization that compatibility isn't about social standing, but about mental and emotional resonance. Jacob was waking up to the fact that the smartest person in the room was the one wearing the apron. And as he watched her leave the office that day, he realized he didn't want her to just find his files, he wanted her to help him find himself. The dinner party was meant to be the social event of the season, a showcase of the Brady-Vanessa alliance. The dining room was packed with the city's elite, sipping vintage wine and engaging in hollow laughter. Zoey was serving the appetizers, moving like a shadow among the guests. She was wearing her standard uniform, crisp and clean, but to Vanessa, her mere presence was an irritation. Vanessa, fueled by wine and a desire to assert dominance, decided to make Zoey the evening's entertainment. "Oh, look at poor Zoey," Vanessa announced loudly, stopping the conversation dead. "She's trying so hard to be invisible, but that dreadful perfume is filling the room. It smells like desperation." A ripple of uncomfortable laughter went through the guests. Zoey froze, her face burning. She wasn't wearing perfume, it was the smell of the lavender soap the household required. She stood there, tray in hand, judged and mocked by the woman she served. It was a cruel, unnecessary blow, designed to strip her of her dignity in front of an audience. Jacob, who had been brooding at the head of the table, felt a snap inside his chest. He looked at Zoey, seeing the unshed tears in her eyes, the way she bit her lip to keep from breaking. Then he looked at Vanessa, who was smirking, delighted with her own cruelty. Enough was enough. The invisible furniture rule was over. Jacob stood up, the chair scraping loudly against the floor. The room went silent. "That's enough, Vanessa," he said, his voice low but thundering with authority. Vanessa blinked, confused. "Excuse me?" Jacob looked her dead in the eye. "Zoey is not the one who smells of desperation here. She has worked harder tonight than you have in your entire life. You will treat her with respect, or you can leave. The shocking twist sucked the air out of the room. The heir defending the maid against the socialite fiancé. It was scandalous. It was unheard of. It was glorious. Zoey looked at Jacob, her eyes wide with shock. No one had ever stood up for her like that. You're defending the servant? Vanessa hissed, her face turning red. I am defending a human being, Jacob retorted, his gaze sweeping the room, daring anyone to disagree. Zoey, please take the rest of the night off. We can serve ourselves. It was a command, but it was also an act of mercy. He was liberating her from the lion's den. Zoey nodded, whispering a thank you, and fled the room, her heart pounding like a drum. She couldn't believe it. He had chosen her dignity over his fiancée's ego. The dinner party continued in an awkward, strained silence, but Jacob didn't care. He felt a rush of adrenaline. He had finally drawn a line in the sand. He had chosen kindness over status. This was the true beginning of the love story, not a kiss, but an act of protection. He realized he couldn't marry Vanessa. He couldn't tie himself to someone so devoid of empathy. The destiny of the Brady Empire was changing course, steered by a moment of moral courage. Up in her room, Zoey sat on her bed, replaying the scene. He had called her a human being. He had shamed the elite to protect her. A warm feeling spread through her chest, a dangerous hope. Maybe, just maybe, he wasn't like the rest of them. Jacob Brady had stepped off his pedestal and stood beside her. And in that moment, the social class gap didn't vanish, but a bridge was built right over it. A bridge made of respect. Vanessa was not a woman who accepted defeat. The dinner party incident had humiliated her, but more dangerously, it had revealed Jacob's changing heart. She saw the way he looked at Zoey, not with lust, but with something far more threatening: respect and affection. She knew she had to act fast to secure her position as the future Mrs. Brady. If Jacob was falling for the help, she had to destroy the object of his affection. She needed a plan that would kill two birds with one stone: remove Zoey and remind Jacob of the gap between them. The plan was classic, cruel, and efficient. She went to the family safe, to which she had been given access as the fiancée, and took the Brady matriarch's diamond ring, a priceless piece meant to be her wedding band. It was the ultimate symbol of the Brady legacy. Vanessa held the ring up to the light, her eyes cold. You want to be the lady of the house? She whispered to the empty room. Let's see how you look in handcuffs. This wasn't just jealousy, it was warfare. She waited until the kitchen was chaotic with lunch preparations. Zoey had left her apron on a hook while she went to the pantry. Slipping in like a snake, Vanessa dropped the heavy diamond ring into the deep pocket of Zoey's apron. It was done in seconds. A simple act that would ruin a life. She walked away with a pounding heart, not from guilt, but from the thrill of the kill. She was rewriting the script, forcing a shocking twist that would paint Zoey as the villain and herself as the victim. When Zoey returned and tied the apron back on, she felt a slight weight in the pocket but assumed it was a stray coin or a cleaning cloth. She went about her day, humming, completely unaware that she was carrying a grenade that was about to blow her life apart. The innocence of her actions made the impending doom even more heart-touching. She was serving the woman who had just framed her, offering tea with a smile to her executioner. Later that afternoon, Vanessa staged the discovery. Jacob. My ring. The heirloom ring. It's gone. Her screams echoed through the mansion. She played the part perfectly, the hysterical, heartbroken bride. Jacob, already on edge, came running. Are you sure? Where did you last have it? He asked, panic setting in. I left it on the vanity. Someone must have taken it. Vanessa sobbed, clinging to him. The trap was sprung. Jacob's mind raced. He didn't want to believe it was theft, not after the watch incident. But the seed of doubt Vanessa had planted, they see what we have, and they take it, was being watered again. He ordered a search, his heart heavy. He prayed it was just misplaced. But Vanessa insisted on searching the staff immediately. "We have to check everyone, Jacob. Now." She led the charge to the kitchen, her eyes gleaming with malicious anticipation. Zoey was washing dishes when they burst in. She dried her hands, confused by the commotion. "Zoey, empty your pockets," Vanessa commanded, her voice trembling with fake tears. Jacob stood back, looking sick. Zoey, having nothing to hide, reached into her apron. Her fingers brushed against the cold metal and stone. She froze. She pulled it out, the massive diamond catching the light, blinking like an accusation. The silence that followed was deafening. The ring lay in the maid's hand, and with it, her future crumbled to dust. The moment the ring appeared in Zoey's hand, Jacob felt like the floor had opened up beneath him. The air left his lungs. He stared at the diamond, then at Zoey's face, which had gone as white as a sheet. "Zoey?" he whispered, his voice cracking. It was a plea for an explanation, a desperate hope that this was a nightmare. But the evidence was damning. The ring was in her pocket. The physical reality of it smashed against his growing trust in her, shattering it into a million pieces. I don't know how this got here," Zoey stammered, tears instantly springing to her eyes. "Mr. Brady, I swear, I didn't take it." But to Jacob, in that moment of high emotion, her denial sounded like a lie. He felt a surge of betrayal that was more painful than anger. He had defended her. He had believed in her integrity. He had started to open his heart to her. And now? It looked like he was the fool. The billionaire played by the clever housekeeper. The realization twisted his gut. Vanessa seized the moment. "You liar! We caught you red-handed!" She shrieked, snatching the ring from Zoey's trembling hand. "Jacob, look! She's been stealing from us right under your nose. Probably the watch too, she just got scared and gave it back." Vanessa's narrative filled the gaps in Jacob's mind. It made terrible, logical sense. The watch return wasn't honesty, it was a aborted theft. He felt a cold hardening in his chest. The warmth he had felt for Zoey turned to ice. "I trusted you," Jacob said, his voice cold and distant, the wall going back up. "I actually thought you were different." His words were like physical blows to Zoey. She shook her head frantically. "Sir, please, you have to believe me. I would never." But he cut her off with a hand raise. He couldn't bear to hear it. The pain of betrayal was too sharp. He felt humiliated for having defended her to his friends, for having thought she was special. Zoey looked at him, pleading with her eyes, begging him to see the truth she couldn't prove. But Jacob was blinded by the facts. He saw a thief. He saw a manipulation. He felt the social class gap slam shut like a prison door. He was the heir, and she was the help who tried to take what wasn't hers. The emotional connection they had built evaporated in the heat of his disappointment. It's a tragic truth trust takes years to build, but seconds to destroy. "I want her gone," Vanessa declared, clinging to Jacob's arm. "Now." Jacob didn't look at Vanessa, he kept his eyes on Zoey, looking for a crack in her mask, but all he saw was terror. He felt a deep, profound sadness. "Pack your things," he said softly, the fight leaving him. He turned his back on her. That gesture, turning his back, was the final severance. He was done. Zoey stood there, alone in a room full of people, framed for a crime she didn't commit, condemned by the man she had secretly started to care for. The injustice was suffocating. She realized then that without power, truth is often voiceless. She had no defense, no cameras, no witnesses. Just her word against a diamond ring. And in this world, diamonds always speak louder. 10 minutes later, Zoey was walking down the grand staircase with a small cardboard box containing her few belongings. The mansion, once a place of work and unexpected connection, now felt like a hostile fortress. The other staff members averted their eyes, afraid to be associated with the thief. She was completely isolated. The shame burned her cheeks, but the heartbreak was what truly crippled her. It wasn't just losing the job, it was losing Jacob's respect. She reached the heavy front doors. Vanessa was waiting there, a triumphant smirk plastered on her face. "Don't ever come back," she hissed, opening the door. Outside, a torrential rain was pouring down, mirroring the chaos in Zoey's soul. "You're lucky we didn't call the police. Consider this a mercy." Vanessa practically shoved her out. Zoey stumbled onto the wet pavement, the doors slamming shut behind her with a finality that echoed in her bones. The rain soaked her instantly, plastering her hair to her face, mixing with the tears she finally let fall. She stood there for a moment, looking at the closed door, shivering. She had given 3 years of her life to this house. She had nursed the master back to health. She had been honest, hardworking, and kind. And this was her reward? To be thrown out like garbage? It was the ultimate low point of her emotional journey. The Cinderella story had turned into a tragedy. She began the long walk to the bus stop, her shoes squelching in the mud. She had no umbrella, no coat, just her uniform and her box. Cars zoomed past, splashing her with dirty water, oblivious to her plight. She felt small, insignificant, and utterly broken. This is the moment where most people would give up, where the spirit breaks under the weight of injustice. But Zoey held on to the box tight. It contained a photo of her dad and the book Jacob had seen her reading. They were symbols of who she really was, regardless of what they said. Inside the mansion, Jacob watched from the window as the small figure disappeared into the storm. He held a glass of scotch, his knuckles white. He told himself he did the right thing. He told himself she was a criminal. But why did his chest hurt so much? Why did the house feel so empty? He tried to drown the doubt with alcohol, but the image of Zoey's tear-filled eyes haunted him. He felt a gnawing sense that he had made a catastrophic mistake, but his pride wouldn't let him admit it. Zoey sat on the bench at the bus stop, shivering uncontrollably. She was jobless, with a stained reputation, and no reference. The future looked bleak. But as she wiped the rain from her eyes, a spark of anger ignited. She knew the truth. She knew she was innocent. And she knew that Vanessa had planted that ring. She didn't know how to prove it yet, but she vowed not to let this destroy her. She was down, but she wasn't out. The bus arrived, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Zoey stepped on, leaving the world of the billionaires behind. She was heading back to her reality, a harsh one, but an honest one. As the bus pulled away, she looked back one last time. "Goodbye, Jacob," she whispered. She was leaving with her integrity intact, even if her heart was shattered. The rain couldn't wash away the truth, and eventually, the truth always rises to the surface. 2 days after Zoey's departure, the mansion was like a tomb. Jacob moved through the rooms like a ghost, his temper short, his mood dark. Vanessa was cheerful, planning the wedding with renewed vigor, now that the problem was gone. Her happiness grated on Jacob. It felt artificial. He couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. His mind kept going back to the watch incident. Zoey had returned it. Why would she steal the ring and put it in her own pocket while still in the house? It was sloppy. It was stupid. And Zoey was not stupid. Driven by a nagging instinct, Jacob went to the security room. He told himself he was just checking the perimeter, but deep down, he was looking for answers. He sat in front of the bank of monitors, scrolling through the footage from the past week. He watched the kitchen feeds. He saw the staff working, saw Zoey scrubbing, saw the mundane rhythm of the house. He was about to turn it off when he clicked on the file from the day of the incident. The timestamp showed 11:45 a.m. The kitchen was empty. Then, the door opened. Jacob leaned in, his breath hitching. It wasn't Zoey. It was Vanessa. She looked around, checking if the coast was clear. Her body language was furtive, guilty. She walked over to where Zoey's apron hung. Jacob watched, frozen in horror, as his fiancée pulled the diamond ring from her pocket and dropped it into the apron. She smiled a cruel, self-satisfied smirk and walked out. The video ended, but Jacob stared at the frozen frame of Vanessa's smirk. The realization hit him with the force of a physical blow. Zoey was innocent. She had been framed. And he had thrown her out into the rain. He had called her a thief. He had betrayed the only person who had shown him genuine kindness. The guilt was overwhelming, a tidal wave of nausea and self-loathing. He had played right into Vanessa's hands. He had been the fool, just as he feared, but not by Zoey. By the woman he was supposed to marry. He slammed his fist onto the desk, a roar of rage escaping his throat. No. The sound echoed in the small room. He replayed the footage again, torturing himself with the truth. He saw Vanessa's calculation, her evil. And he saw his own failure. He had failed to protect Zoey. He had failed to see the truth. The redemption arc had just begun, and it started with the bitter taste of regret. He downloaded the footage to his phone, his hands shaking. This was the smoking gun. The shocking twist was fully revealed. The villain was sleeping in his bed, and the hero was somewhere out in the city, suffering because of his blindness. He felt a newfound clarity, sharp and painful. The wedding, the social status, the proper life was all garbage. Jacob stood up, a dangerous energy radiating from him. He wasn't the bored heir anymore. He was a man on a mission. He had to fix this. He had to make it right. But first, he had to confront the architect of this disaster. He stormed out of the security room, the footage burning a hole in his pocket. The reckoning was coming, and it was going to be public. The rehearsal dinner was in full swing. Friends, family, and business partners gathered to toast the happy couple. Vanessa was glowing, holding court, telling a fabricated story about how hard it was to find good help these days. Jacob stood at the front of the room, silent, gripping the microphone stand. He looked at the sea of faces, the fake smiles, the opulence. It all disgusted him now. He looked at Vanessa, who beamed at him, expecting a toast to her beauty. She was about to get a very different kind of speech. "Everyone, could I have your attention?" Jacob's voice boomed over the speakers. The room quieted. "I know we are here to celebrate a union. But I've realized that a union must be based on truth." Vanessa looked confused, her smile faltering slightly. "Vanessa and we have different values." He pulled his phone out and connected it to the large projection screen behind him. "I think you all deserve to see the true character of the woman I was going to marry." Before Vanessa could stop him, he hit play. The giant screen lit up with the grainy but clear security footage. The room gasped as they watched Vanessa look around, pull the ring, and plant it in the apron. The video played on a loop, the evil smirk magnified for everyone to see. The silence in the room was absolute, heavy with shock. Vanessa turned pale, her glass slipping from her hand and shattering on the floor. "Jacob! Turn it off. It's not what it looks like." She shrieked, but the evidence was undeniable. "It is exactly what it looks like," Jacob said, his voice cold as steel. "You framed an innocent woman. You destroyed someone's livelihood because of your own insecurity and malice." He turned to the crowd. "There will be no wedding. I cannot marry a person capable of such cruelty." The shocking twist sent the room into chaos. Whispers exploded into shouts. Vanessa's parents looked like they wanted to vanish. Vanessa stood there, humiliated, stripped of her mask in front of the very people she tried to impress. "Get out of my house," Jacob told her, looking her in the eye. "And don't ever come back." Vanessa, realizing she had lost everything, the money, the status, the man, fled the room in tears, a reversal of Zoey's exit, but this time, completely deserved. The guests began to scatter, awkward and stunned. Jacob stood alone on the stage, the wreckage of his social life around him. But for the first time in years, he felt free. He had blown up his life, but he had cleared the debris. He had chosen justice. But the victory felt hollow. Exposing Vanessa was only half the battle. The real work was fixing what he had broken. He thought of Zoe, out there somewhere, thinking he still hated her. The guilt gnawed at him. He didn't care about the scandal, he cared about her. He walked off the stage, ignoring the questions from his confused parents. He grabbed his car keys. "Where are you going?" his mother asked, scandalized. "To find the only real thing I've ever known," Jacob replied. He walked out of the mansion, leaving the ruins of the engagement behind. The hunt for redemption was on. He had to find Zoe, no matter what it took. Jacob drove his luxury sports car into parts of the city he had only seen on the news. The contrast was jarring. The sleek, silver vehicle looked like a spaceship landed in the slums. He had Zoe's file from HR, which listed an old address. He navigated narrow streets, dodging potholes and stray dogs, his anxiety mounting with every mile. The social class gap was no longer a concept, it was a physical journey he was undertaking. He felt the eyes of the locals on him, judging the intruder in the expensive suit. He reached the address, a dilapidated apartment complex with peeling paint. He ran up the stairs, ignoring the smell of damp and decay, and pounded on the door. A confused old woman opened it. "Zoe?" "No, she moved out months ago." "Couldn't afford the rent," she rasped. Jacob's heart sank. "Do you know where she went?" The woman shrugged. "Maybe the shelter. Or the diner on 5th. She used to talk about working there." For the next 12 hours, the billionaire scoured the city. He went to shelters, diners, laundromats. He showed her picture to strangers, offering money for information. He was desperate, frantic. His suit was wrinkled, his hair messy, his eyes wild. He was stripping away the layers of his privilege, getting down in the dirt to find her. He realized how hard her life was, how much she had to fight just to survive. It deepened his respect and his guilt. "Have you seen her?" he asked a waitress at a greasy spoon diner. The waitress looked at the photo. "Yeah, she was here asking for a shift. Said she was desperate. I think she got a job at the fish market down at the docks. Hard work, nasty smell. Only place hiring for cash." Jacob felt a lump in his throat. The fish market. He had sent the woman who nursed him with such gentleness to gut fish in the cold. He was a monster. He sped towards the docks. The sun was setting, casting long shadows over the industrial grimness of the port. It was a rough, dangerous area. Jacob didn't care. He parked the car and ran towards the warehouses. The smell of brine and fish was overwhelming. He saw rows of workers in rubber aprons, hose domes, the noise of machinery. It was a world away from his ballroom. He scanned the faces, his heart pounding. Then he saw her. She was wearing heavy rubber boots and a stained apron, her hair tied back in a messy bun, scrubbing a concrete floor. She looked exhausted, thinner, but she was working with that same fierce determination. She wasn't broken. She was surviving. Seeing her there, amidst the fish guts and the grime, Jacob felt a surge of love so powerful it nearly brought him to his knees. He walked towards her, his expensive shoes splashing in the fish water. He didn't care about the smell or the dirt. He only cared about her. He was entering her world, not as a savior, but as a penitent. The search was over. Now came the hardest part, begging for forgiveness. Zoe was scrubbing the floor, her back aching, trying to tune out the harsh shouts of the foreman. She heard footsteps approaching, dress shoes, not rubber boots. The rhythm was wrong for this place. She looked up, wiping a stray scale from her cheek. She froze. Standing there, amidst the buckets of fish and ice, was Jacob Brady. He looked like a wreck, disheveled, sweaty, eyes red-rimmed. For a second, she thought she was hallucinating from exhaustion. "Jacob?" she whispered, gripping her brush like a shield. The other workers stopped, staring at the strange scene, the billionaire and the fish cleaner. Jacob didn't say a word at first. He just looked at her, drinking in the sight of her, making sure she was real. Then, he did something that shocked everyone. He didn't command, he didn't demand. He dropped to his knees on the wet, dirty concrete floor. "Zoey," he choked out, his voice breaking. "I am so sorry." The silence in the warehouse was deafening. The foreman dropped his clipboard. Zoey stared at him, her mouth slightly open. "What are you doing?" "Get up, you'll ruin your suit," she said, her instinct to care for him kicking in even now. "I don't care about the suit," Jacob cried, tears streaming down his face. "I care about you. I know everything. I saw the video. I know Vanessa planted the ring. I was a fool. I was blind. I betrayed you, and I will never forgive myself." He poured his heart out right there on the killing floor. "I looked for you everywhere. I fired her. I cancelled the wedding. None of it matters if you don't forgive me. I was wrong, Zoey. You are the most honest, decent person I have ever known, and I treated you like dirt." It was a raw, public confession. He was destroying his ego, leveling the social class gap with his knees in the mud. This was the redemption moment, total vulnerability. Zoey looked at him, tears welling up in her own eyes. She saw the sincerity in his face. She saw the pain he was in. She remembered the man she nursed when he was sick, the man who defended her at dinner. She knew this was the real Jacob. You cancelled the wedding?" she asked softly. "I cancelled everything," he said, looking up at her. "Because a life without you isn't a life I want. Please, Zoey. Give me a chance to make it right." The workers were watching, some with mouths open, some smiling. It was a scene from a movie, playing out in the unlikeliest of places. Zoey looked around, then looked back at Jacob. She dropped the brush. She took a step forward and reached out her hand. "Stand up, Jacob," she said gently. "You don't belong on your knees." He took her hand, his grip desperate, and stood up. He didn't let go. "Will you come back?" he asked. "Not as a maid. Never as a maid. Just come back with me." Zoey looked into his eyes and saw the promise of a new future. "Okay," she whispered. "I'll come back." The workers erupted in cheers and whistles. Jacob pulled her into a hug, not caring about the fish smell or the dirt, burying his face in her neck. It was the embrace of two souls who had found each other across a vast divide. The drive back to the mansion was quiet but peaceful. Jacob held Zoey's hand the entire way, refusing to let go even to shift gears. When they pulled up to the massive gates, Zoey felt a pang of anxiety. The last time she was here, she was thrown out in the rain. Jacob sensed her fear. "It's different now," he promised. "It's yours as much as mine." They walked through the front doors. The staff was gathered in the hall, looking nervous. They had heard the rumors. Jacob stopped in the center of the foyer, holding Zoey's hand high. "Listen to me, everyone," he announced, his voice steady and proud. "Zoey is returning. But she is not to be given a uniform. She is not to be given orders. She is the lady of this house. You will treat her with the same respect you treat me. Is that clear?" The staff nodded, "Yes, sir." Terrifyingly relieved that the reign of Vanessa was over. Jacob led Zoey up the stairs, past the guest rooms, to the master wing. He opened the door to a beautiful suite, filled with light. "This isn't the maid's quarters," Zoey said, looking around. "No, Jacob smiled, a genuine, warm smile that reached his eyes. "It's the beginning of the rest of our lives." He turned to her, cupping her face in his hands. "Zoey, you taught me what love is. You taught me what dignity is. I don't want you to work for me. I want you to walk with me." In the weeks that followed, the transformation was complete. The mansion, once cold and sterile, became warm and welcoming under Zoey's influence. She didn't lose herself. She still watered the plants and greeted the staff by name, but now she did it as a partner, not a servant. The social class gap had been erased by the power of character. The media went wild for the Cinderella story, but Jacob and Zoey ignored them. They were too busy building a real life. One evening, they stood on the balcony where the story began. The stars were out. Jacob pulled a small box from his pocket, not the cursed family ring, but a new one, simple and elegant, just like her. "I'm not asking you to be a housekeeper anymore," he whispered, kneeling once again, but this time in joy. "Zoey Rodriguez, will you be my wife? Will you be the queen of this stubborn heart?" Zoey looked at the man who had journeyed from blindness to sight, from arrogance to humility. She saw her true love. "Yes," she said, tears of happiness falling. "Yes, Jacob." He slipped the ring on her finger, and they kissed under the moonlight. The maid had captivated the heir, not by magic, but by being herself. And the heir had found his greatest treasure not in a bank vault, but in the woman who once cleaned his house. It was a shocking twist, a heart-touching journey, and above all, a love story for the ages. Jacob and Zoey proved to us that while money can build a house, only character can build a home. In the end, true nobility isn't found in a bank account or a family name, but in the choices we make when we think no one is watching. If you also believe that integrity is worth more than gold, and that kindness is the ultimate status symbol, then you have found your tribe. Subscribe right now and join a community that celebrates the true heroes of everyday life. Now, I have a mission for you. First, hit that like button to send a signal to the algorithm that we want more stories about justice and love. Second, comment below, have you ever been judged unfairly like Zoey, only to rise above it? I want to read your story. And third, share this video with someone who needs a reminder that good things really do happen to good people. And the emotion doesn't stop here. Our channel is a vault of unforgettable journeys and hidden gems just like this one. Go explore our previous videos. I promise, there are other treasures waiting for you to discover right now. But don't get too comfortable, because we are already crafting the next story, and trust me, it's going to be even more intense. Turn on that notification bell so you're the first to witness what's coming next. You won't want to be left out of the next emotional adventure.